Jeff Matthews, Zach Pugh. It's crunch time.
It's crunch time here in the studios of Clarksville, Tennessee, and 91.9. Jeff Matthews joining you once again. It has been too long. It has been, it feels like it has to have been almost a year to be back here in the studios, but big news for everybody just joining us now. Zach Pugh joins us in the studio. He will be my co-star on this show for me. Last season, we lost both of our other GAs that were with us. Ashton headed out the door to start his big new career. Congratulations to him. But we still have some time down here in Clarksville, so we're going to make the best of it. One thing I always like to do, Zach, is I always start the show off with, how was your weekend?
Man, great to be here. Thanks for letting me come in and everything like that. I'm happy to be co-hosting with you, so looking for the opportunity to be here all season. Thanks for that. And in general, my weekend was great, man. I got a chance to watch some really good games. Got a chance to hear a really good game called by a certain person in the room, and with that squirrel. And other than that, it was great, man. How was your weekend?
It was all right. It wasn't too bad. I did have, my day job. Had to do that all weekend, but
fun.
The paycheck comes and it makes it a little bit better. So
right.
Can't be too mad about it. But no, my weekend was pretty good. I was able to watch a couple of games. Was not able to watch the Dallas game, which is the biggest.
I got
downer
you covered there.
It's the biggest downer of the weekend. Mainly because a huge win for the Cowboys. I mean, being able to get out there, get a win over the Chargers, gotta love to see that. But no, it was a good weekend. Spent some time with some friends over in Spring Hill, Tennessee. So it was a good amount of time. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now we're gonna start off. Now most of the time we start off with high school sports, so we're gonna do that as well today. So first up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the graphic be pulled up there, Wicks, whenever you get a chance. And I'm just going to start reading off the scoreboard for us. And let us start with Beach versus Clarksville. Beach takes it 40-7. Henry County takes down Northwest 48-0. Nashville Christian, 47. Clarksville Academy had 14. And then Rossview 25, West Creek 6. Portland 21, Northeast 20. And then Springfield 47, Kenwood 0. The only really close one that they had this past weekend for the Clarksville area was that Portland Northeast game, only a 1 point difference. Now, unfortunately, neither one of us are covering high school sports this semester, but, you could definitely look at some of these scores and you can tell, and sometimes it's just, some of these schools, the matchups are just not adequate.
You got a school, was it 48-0 right there?
Correct. Yeah, 48-0. It was Kenwood.
Kenwood? I mean, Kenwood's nothing or Kenwood's 48?
Kenwood had 0.
0? I mean, if you're Kenwood going into that game, you're thinking, man, we got to get something here. And in high school sports in general, that's what you hope to get is something. You don't hope to get smashed by 48 points on a Friday night, right? But I mean, where I come from, it's my high school was kind of a used to thing. You're like, oh, it's Laverne. You're gonna get that. You're gonna get that. But unfortunately, you don't expect that. From what I heard from all the Clarksville schools around here, you don't get that. So.
Sometimes some weeks, and I think this kind of goes around for the whole state of Tennessee probably. A lot of these high schools, man, you just have some of those matchups that are really hard for some of these teams to even go into. And funny, we're talking about this, the Ole Miss Austin Peay game just a couple weeks ago. I mean, that's a titan of a team to go up against for Austin Peay, and yet Coach Scotty Walden, the head coach for Austin Peay, is able to turn around and make it a plus. It makes it a positive, and I think that's what a lot of these high school teams have to do in a lot of situations.
Right.
I mean, they have, let's take, for instance, the Henry County game.
Yeah.
Henry County is, a couple of players shy of a college football team.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got a school like that that's been productive for years, that they're going to have a program that's able to keep building and building and building, right? And as you said, let's use the Ole Miss and Austin Peay game. Kiffin compared to who we have here at Austin Peay, you gotta give Kiffin a great job for being able to say, hey, look, I'm going to get a school that isn't ranked near where I'm supposed to be to kind of boost my guys' morale up for that. I think you kind of get that context within high school games too, where these big name high school teams are playing these small grade schools to make their team more confident when they're going down the line to the playoffs and all of that as well. So, I mean, we see that differential in general within week 1, week 2 of every football game when it comes down to the season. So,
I mean, that is pretty darn true. But I've already touched a little bit on Austin Peay, but let's go ahead and talk about this past weekend for Austin Peay. Huge football game against Morehead State. Morehead being a former rival in the OVC, but since Morehead has moved to the PFL conference,
Yep.
And Austin Peay still remains in the OVC, but not for long. They will be moving conferences next year. They'll be moving to the ASUN. But let's talk about the game.
Yeah, no, the game was great, man. I mean, you were there. I was here at the station. I didn't have a great view at it, but I was able to hear everything that was going on, except for the lovely squirrel incident, obviously. But, I mean, Ellis is going 21 and 36, 345 yards, 3 touchdowns. You can't. I mean, them in general, they did such a great job with keeping penalties down and not having as much laundry on the field. Whereas Morehead State, was almost 60-something yards or something like that in penalties almost.
I think it was 70, but yeah,
it was insane the amount of penalties they get, and that's a team that you don't expect to see that much discourse throughout the game with, being such a confident, pass-happy team.
Well, and I think that's something that the Governors wanted to watch out for, was getting into that penalty area and, losing that a large amount of yards just in that category. However, don't think that Austin Peay didn't have any. I mean, they still gave up a lot of yardages off of penalties, and I think that's something that Coach Walden is going to definitely want to take a look at. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway from this past weekend's game against Morehead was how deep the offense for the Austin Peay Governors really is. I mean, I think there's 3 or 4 running backs that are, starter material, and then you have 3 or 4 receivers that are all starting material. It's just an incredible amount of offensive football. The defense, on the other hand, I don't want to say the defense is bad. Defense looked really strong this past
was great
Saturday.
against Morehead State, yeah.
However, in the middle of that game, probably in later second, I won't even say early third, I'd say probably mid-second to late second quarter, it just seemed that Austin Peay's defense didn't have a whole lot of motivation to go out there on the field. And I think sometimes that's just really hard to combat as a coach, but then also as a whole team, losing that motivation.
Well, and you're talking about it's towards the second quarter. I mean, at that point in time, Austin Peay's 28-6. I mean, so it's hard for your defense to go, hey, yeah, let's go out there and stop them. We have a 28-point lead.
Well, you say that. I mean, it would have been a bigger lead if they had kept up that defense.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some teams get in danger with that because they have that problem where that defense has a point where, Austin Peay last season with when Coach Hudspeth was with us.
Right.
I mean, that was one thing the Governors struggled with in many games was, I don't want to say many, but maybe 2 or 3, which is enough to point it out.
It's enough.
Right.
It's enough for somebody to say something. One game's enough for somebody to say something on.
Right, that's true. But, one thing that was very much noticed was the fact that it seemed that Austin Peay had a really hard time in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth, on defense, and just allowed offenses to score.
And you get that, you almost get that sense in the fourth quarter of this game. Morehead puts 20 points up in the fourth quarter. Now, the question is, you're at that point in time, it's what, like 30-something to 40-something to 20, I think, or like 13.
Roughly.
Yeah, it's awful. It's a very lopsided game. So you start wondering, okay, did I put the second and third string guys in to start combating? I mean, Morehead put their backup quarterback in and finally threw a touchdown.
That was kind of wild.
I was like, where's this guy been the whole game? But to talk about Austin Peay, you were talking about offensive weapons and depth and stuff like that. Ahmad Tanner, 17 carries, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns on 17 carries.
Yeah.
And he was not the primary guy running that ball Saturday night or Saturday afternoon.
I mean, there was, like I said, there was just so many people who got hands on that ball on the offense. Benico Harley, Ahmad Tanner, C.J. Evans, Dre McCray, Eugene Minter was a huge one in the receiving world.
McCray had some really good catches.
Oh, McCray.
Only 5 receptions, but 86 yards, and had some great catches to get down the field.
I was telling Jamar Perkins, who calls the games with me, not too long ago, I think it was actually close to after that game, I was telling him, there's a lot of things in this Governor's offense that they can use as starters if need be.
Yeah. And we saw injuries and stuff played effect a little bit into the defensive side of the ball. We're missing our number one corner that's played for us at one point in time.
And yet the defense looked good.
Yeah, no, I know.
He just adds to it. Cordell Jackson, I believe, is who you're talking about.
I'm talking about for sure.
I mean, and he being one of the biggest staples of the defense for Austin Peay.
Yeah, it's a veteran presence. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it for any other style of sport in general. You lose that veteran presence, you're going to struggle per se, but they didn't. They came out and they still played, teeth knocking out football type thing for defense.
It was a fun time to watch. That is for sure, because man, I've missed football in Clarksville.
And it's been 2 years.
I was about to say, it's
2
been a
years
hot minute
since we've had a chance to cover anything like that. So it's great to see even having fans in the stands, man. That was awesome to see too. I bet, like I said, I wasn't in the stadium, but I bet the the view from being outside of the stadium, even though it was a rainy-ish day, was still pretty great to see all the fans coming out and actually people interact and everything too.
Oh yeah, it was a great time. The atmosphere was, I mean, exactly what you want it to be. I think everybody has just missed football season in general.
MVP of that game was the Squirrel, though.
I was about to say, I think the Squirrel won it, man. I think without the Squirrel, Austin Peay loses that game. No, but for those who don't know, a squirrel ran across the field in the middle of the game. I think during a timeout or something. But yeah, it was a good time. Love to have football back. But one thing I do want us to go ahead and jump right on into is our next topic, and it's also going to be we do have a little bit of a segment for you guys coming up right now, and I'm going to let Wix send it over. Huge interview with Pete Weber from the Nashville Predators. Jeff Matthews here joining me. Pete Weber, an absolute legend in the Nashville hockey scene. You are a Tennessee Sportscaster of the Year 8 times for the National Sports Media Association. How does a man in Notre Dame, a college student out of Notre Dame, become a staple in Nashville hockey?
That's a great question. I really don't know there's an easy answer to that. As a matter of fact, now I started coming to Nashville because of minor league baseball. So in 1985, the Buffalo Bisons and the Nashville Sounds both joined the American Association. Buffalo had taken the team out of Wichita, and Nashville took the team out of Evansville, Indiana, and moved them down to Greer Stadium. So I was coming into town 4 times a year for usually a 3 or a 4 game series from 1985 through 1995. And then I went back to hockey full time with the Buffalo Sabres. But entirely happenstance. Like I had been speaking with the class, keep your eyes and ears open for opportunities. And one day I was at my office in Buffalo, and all of a sudden on Prodigy Information Service, that really dates things, but here it was the spring of '97, it said the NHL has just announced the granting of 4 provisional franchises to Nashville, Columbus, Atlanta, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I hollered downstairs to my wife, Claudia. I said, Claudia, whose parents by that point in time were living in Knoxville, I said, how much easier for us would holidays be if we were in Nashville as opposed to Buffalo? I mean, yes, you could drive from Buffalo down to Knoxville, but it took a while. And here it's at worst a 3-hour process. So I went after it, and I was able to locate the founding owner of the Predators at his home in Racine, Wisconsin, and FedExed my stuff to him the next day, and then just kept following up for the next year. And finally, by August of '98, we faced off for the first time in September in a preseason game in Huntsville, Alabama. I was signed, sealed, and delivered to Nashville.
Now, previous to that, in the early days of Pete Weber, you worked with the LA Kings.
Yes.
Now, the original story is that they actually sent you a rejection letter.
Yes.
So would there be a Nashville Pete Weber without the LA Kings if that rejection letter didn't turn around?
In many ways, no. Let's look at it this way. If it weren't for the Los Angeles Kings doing that, as it turned out, a friend of mine had turned down the job, opening it up for me.
Oh, wow.
I took it. We're still friends. He later was my real estate agent in Seattle when I got my place up there. But then, let's also take into account the Kings. 7 years after I left them, in 1981, in August of '88, I got this phone call in Des Moines, Iowa, when I was doing a Bison's Iowa Cubs series, that the Kings have obtained this guy named Wayne Gretzky. And had Wayne Gretzky not gone to Los Angeles, I don't know if there's a Predators franchise, because he helped open the eyes of people in the Sun Belt toward hockey. Shortly thereafter, you got teams in San Jose and Anaheim, and then the Stanley Cup was won in Dallas. It won in Tampa Bay in 2004. So I think that the Kings and their move for Wayne Gretzky have a great deal to do with me being here.
Now, you talked about Wayne Gretzky and bringing hockey to the Sunshine Belt. Can you talk about what that was like being teaching Nashvillians about hockey and bringing that hockey atmosphere down here into Tennessee?
And again, thankfully, I had that opportunity and the lessons learned in Los Angeles, doing the same thing with that group of people, because at that point in time, we were probably averaging 7,000 or 8,000 fans a night in the Forum, which seated 16,000 005 for hockey. And so those lessons that I was teaching then, thankfully, did not leave my mind. And I was able to take them as the basis, maybe not a syllabus, but an outline sketch for what we would do in the Hockey 101 meetings at Bridgestone Arena, which then was the Nashville Arena.
The Nashville Arena. So I'm going to ask you one question about the Nashville Predators.
Yeah.
A lot of what they're doing right now, they've moved Arvidsson, Ellis is now gone, and now Pecorine has also retired.
Yeah.
A lot of new, fresh men coming out onto the ice. It's a young Nashville team.
Mm-hmm.
How confident do you feel the Predators are in making a run this season?
I'm hopeful. I don't know if I can say I'm confident because I got to see. I guess I grew up too close to Missouri, so I want to show me what you have, and we can see what happens as a result of that. But I'm confident that David Poile has the right people in place. His scouts have, without a doubt, particularly with defensemen and goaltenders, turned up great young talent in those positions, and then try to augment them with trades. He has yet to re-sign Philip Forsberg, though he has a year remaining on his contract, and Matthias Ekholm, a defenseman. So let's see what he can do with that. And training camp is just a couple of weeks away.
And it's an exciting time. Pete, thank you so much for joining me. Again, it has been such an honor getting a moment just to talk with you.
You're welcome. And if you ever need a ride, this gentleman is an excellent driver, just so you know.
Only on golf carts. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we're going to send it right back over to WAPX. That was Pete Weber joining me in the ballroom over in the UC. It was such an awesome time to talk with him and really get to talk to somebody who, one, does exactly what I want to do, and then two, it was just a cool opportunity to talk to somebody who has been a part of Nashville history. I mean, it was. I put it on my social media. Biggest blessing of a moment.
I mean, it's one of those moments where you've got a guy who's been in the field for a very long time, and to come in here and do a seminar and be able to talk to everybody and take the chance to interview with you as well. It's not only is it cool for you, but it's almost humbling as well for him as well.
Oh, yeah.
To show that he can still help people guide people through this career to help them be better.
It was awesome.
And it was great to hear his standpoints on a lot of different things, especially bringing hockey to Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was cool.
And I think one of the coolest things I thought about talking with him was the emphasis that, a lot of people see that he taught Nashville hockey.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
When hockey came to Nashville,
He came from
nobody knew. He
L.A.,
came from,
right? The Kings?
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
he did
he
come
came from the Kings and came over to teach everybody. And you're right, nobody knew about
Correct.
it.
I don't know if he was at the Kings at the exact time. He might have been. I might be missing up my timeline. But,
Right, same.
but I mean, nobody knew hockey rules or anything like that. One of our adjunct professors, Phil Wood, would tell a story about going to Preds games at the Municipal and people standing up and cheering for icing on the play, even though no one knew what icing was at the time. But, it was a cool moment. And then being able to get to talk Nashville hockey with him, I mean,
Right.
I kind of geeked out a little bit when we were doing that.
I don't blame you. My favorite portion was the discussion when he brought up the catfish. Catfish and the octopus was cool for Detroit's octopus.
Learning the origins of
learning
the
origins.
catfish on the ice for the Predators, super cool.
Right.
I mean, you just can't complain about those times when you get to do that. But one thing we did talk about going into the sports world, Nashville hockey, young team, absolutely young team. Nashville looking. I don't want to. I guess you could say that they're rebuilding this year. I mean, it's kind
reloading, maybe.
Okay.
Less
I
rebuilding,
like
more
that
reloading.
One. Yeah,
I mean,
kind of like reloading.
Statistically, they don't look bad on paper from
Right.
what they're doing. They're getting rid of players that have been around for a while to get players that have somewhat been in the league newer styled wise, but still a chance to be able to be considered not necessarily veterans, but players that have experience within the league. So
I mean, I will say everyone is sad to see Pecorine go.
yeah, I mean, seeing him leave is awful. But I mean, what was it last season? Saros played a lot more games.
I don't know if he played a lot more games, but I think he did.
He was in more of the serious games.
Yeah.
You didn't see Rene the last two seasons. You haven't seen Rene like you usually were seeing him, where he was the goaltender to turn to during our tough games. It was more of Saros was starting to juice was starting to be the person you would go to get that.
Yeah, that's a very true statement. I mean, Pecorine, veteran goalkeeper for the Predators, did a fantastic job of being able to coach Jose Saros and being able to give him a lot of wisdom and being able to give him the tools necessary to perform to the Nashville caliber. However,
Will Saros maintain that is the question.
exactly right. You kind of have to look forward to that, and then also
It's always the question where that leaves.
You say Saros has been here for a good amount of years.
Yes, he has.
So when
He's no spring chicken by
I was
any
about to
means.
say, so we may not have him for much longer. So whoever the next guy comes in, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's all I got for hockey. But we're gonna move
Same
on to some football, more football, I should say.
Love it.
Going into the NFL world of things, which is, I think, for me, the greatest thing
It's my powerhouse.
in the world right now because I love football.
I'm right there with you, man.
Cowboys won, but that's not my topic for the day. Carson Wentz sprained both of his ankles. I'm still trying to figure out how.
How that's possible?
Yeah, like.
I mean, let's face it, and I don't mind talking a little bit about your Cowboys later down the road, and maybe we talk about the next topic.
Right.
But let's talk about injuries around the league. I mean, Wentz. Let's start there.
There's just so
they're
many.
coming into Tennessee this weekend.
Yes.
The question mark now is are you going to see Carson Wentz? Or are you going to see Jacob Eason? With the O line that's there, I think you give Wentz a chance if he's healthy enough.
I was
to
about
do
to say because with his sprained ankle, he wanted to go back in when he hurt himself.
But I mean, let's look at
that's
Frank
every
Reich for that
football
one.
player.
Yeah,
I
come
think.
on, I mean.
But with that being said, I think if Wentz is healthy, you have to stick with Wentz.
Right.
I think that's that's your option. That's your best
It's
option.
Frank Reich's quarterback. I mean, that's who he wanted. That's why they traded for him. That's why they went after him. And he's not the only one injured around the league. You've got Big Ben. I saw today. Big Ben's got a pectoral issue.
Where?
That's right. I mean,
Where's his pec at?
right. He doesn't seem like he's got any.
If he has a pec, I have a pec. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
But he's got a pectoral issue. You've got Tyrod Taylor's officially out for Thursday's game. So you've got a rookie quarterback coming in and playing. And if memory serves correctly, that rookie quarterback's name is Davis Mills. Do you know who Davis Mills is? I do not either.
Yeah, no, not really.
I'm not a very familiar person, but I knew Tyrod Taylor for sure. So
Right.
now you're wondering, okay, if you're Texans, are you going to dip into trying to bring Deshaun back, even though Deshaun can't play? So
That's a whole
Tennessee,
mess of a situation.
Oh gosh, you're right. And the Titans have such a great chance to get a leg up on everybody in the AFC South right now.
They have a chance, but are they going to be able to capitalize on it?
No.
Is my issue.
No.
I'm glad you talked about the Titans because they're going to be one of our teams we're looking at in our next topic.
Yep.
But keeping with the Titans on this topic that we're on right now, there's a lot of things that the Titans are struggling with.
Yeah, I mean, it's different to see. Week one, you could not see Derrick Henry running the ball that great. And
He
then
looked like Zeke Elliott.
Week two, he busts out 260 something yards, something like
I
that.
think
I mean,
so.
it's ridiculous.
He ran a lot. I know
He
that.
ran 182
And Julio
yards
looked 10
on
times
35 carries.
Yeah, and Julio looked 10 times better.
Julio had 6 receptions, 128 yards.
Yeah, and then that first game
and
I
no
mean,
penalties.
Yeah, that was the big one. That was
Nothing for Vrabel to talk about in a press conference later on.
Oh my gosh. But you want to talk about penalties?
Oh gosh, yes, I do.
This
actually.
this has kind of been the big topic right now around the league, around the NFL. One coach has now said something about this past weekend. Pete Carroll not happy. He had two taunting calls called on his team.
I saw that in game.
May have, not 100% sure, have had an effect on the Tennessee Titans win.
Seattle choked. Let's be real.
I think that's more of the answer, but
you can't blame two of those penalties on that. Yeah, they gave the yardage,
exactly.
but you can't blame Seattle losing that. They were up 14 points at one point. You just
was
can't.
it was 14.
You cannot expect them to. You just can't blame the penalties on that.
No, you can't. But here's the thing. However, I do see Pete Carroll's frustration because
for sure.
there is, to me, it's so inconsistent of what taunting is.
I know there's 11 taunting flags in this season. That's as much as they had last season. We went from and you and I have discussed this in person before. We went from a time frame of T.O. and Ocho Cinco,
right,
where you could taunt as much as you wanted to. You
could do more than taunt.
Yeah, you could openly pay a ref $1 bill on the field at Chad Ochocinco in a Ravens
people
game.
laugh at it.
And people laugh at it and think it's funny. You're right. And then you've got you got the change in the NFL, the change of the guard. When those guys left, it was no more taunting, no more celebrations, no nothing.
Well, I don't know about, I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to tell if I could put blame on any one player that started this whole
Right.
bad attitude on the field. Joe Namath comes to mind. I believe he had a little bit of an attitude, if I'm thinking myself correctly.
Quarterback that played for the Bears
Yeah.
for the long time. Is who I'm thinking about. The guy wore the sunglasses all the
Ditka?
time. No, he
I don't
wore
think he
headbands too. Our next episode, I'll have that name.
I was about to say, we'll figure it out.
My brain's not going to remember, but he in my mind I remember him being the bad boy quarterback.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like old school.
Old school.
Yeah.
Hey, sometimes old school is a lot more fun to watch.
Hey, old school's still playing. He's just got a pec injury.
He's not going to be in the league much longer. I can
No,
tell
he
you
won't.
that much.
Tom Brady will outlast
I don't know.
him.
Do you think this is kind of a spur of the moment topic right here? Do you think Ben Roethlisberger's staying much longer?
No, I think that if you're Ben and you don't make it to the Super Bowl this year, you're out.
You got to go, right?
I think you're done. I think and if you do make it to the Super Bowl and you lose, you're out.
See,
You know.
Breeze
knew it.
Breeze knew,
knew it.
and he did it. I mean, granted, there was a couple of
more reasons why he went.
I was about to say, I think there could have been a couple. I don't want to speculate on that.
Injuries for sure. When you have a
Yeah.
punctured lung and 11 fractured
Yeah.
ribs, I think it's time to go.
He was a beast, though.
Yeah, I know.
I liked Drew Brees.
He made a great comment week one when they saw Jameis throw the deep ball. They came to Brees and said, "I guess that's what they've been missing," and he called himself out about it. And I love that. I think that's great to the humility of a quarterback who's going to be in the Hall of Fame to say, "Hey, you know, turns out they were missing this. Turns out that it wasn't doing that good."
But let's get back onto this taunting rule.
For sure.
Is there any remedy for it, do you think? I mean, or is this just something that a lot of the players and coaches are just going to have to figure out a way to get over?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think you can remedy it by telling your players to stay on their sides and to not be at each other's throats or to be trying to push the envelope because you know that they're looking for it. But at the same time, you can't expect someone not to show off a little bit. And if you're going to allow celebrations, when are you going to cut the line off at the celebration?
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's where we're at right now. As you said, you can't find out where taunting begins and your celebration ends, right? So that's where we're at in that definition. And I think that as we progress through the NFL this season, we're going to see what refs have that line and where they sit it at. Are they going to start letting it happen more and more in big games like the Carlton Davis thing that happened in the Super Bowl, this past Super Bowl with Tampa Bay and the Chiefs, the peace sign, the patented peace sign that came through as he walked away. You just can't expect players to stop doing that.
Right.
After you've given them permission.
And I think that's kind of, what Pete Carroll was kind of talking about in this article that I was reading. I mean, he kind of pointed out the fact that, a lot of these players, those emotions are in the moment.
Right.
And, you don't even know what you're doing.
Right.
You're just, celebrating with your team.
Exactly.
Doing your thing. You're happy. You're excited. Boom, boom, boom. Flag.
All of a sudden, laundry on the field because you decided to high five an extra time.
Right. Or you pointed at a player.
Yeah.
To me,
or
some of those small things are kind of ridiculous in my opinion.
I agree. I remember probably 2 or 3 years ago, well, not a little bit longer than that, when Steve Smith Sr. was still in the league playing for Baltimore. I watched him throw the ball down and do his patent ball spin that he usually does. And they called him on a taunting penalty because he dropped it and he turned and a player ran into it. And so they said that he was throwing the ball at the player instead of doing what he usually does. And we got I think it was a 10-yard penalty because of that. And I was like, oh, that's not right.
That's
But
incorrect.
Yeah, officiating has been a problem these past few games, and I'm assured we can turn that page to that. There was another topic you had talked about that I think you were wanting to get to, which was the Titans game.
Right.
That lovely Julio Jones catch.
Oh my gosh, that catch was a catch, and I don't care. I don't
It's a
care
catch.
what anybody says.
It's a catch.
I don't care. Honestly, if you have an argument against it, I will kindly show you the trash can in the door,
In the door.
to put your piece of paper in,
Right.
and help you get to your car because I
Right.
don't want to hear it. Honestly, it was a catch, and nothing in this world can
You can
change
see
my mind
green
from that.
between the cleat. That's all I'm
Exactly.
saying. And he's not the only one. There were times in the Cowboys Chargers game that I saw this weekend, or the Ravens and Kansas City game, where officiating made a difference in certain areas of the game. Intentional grounding plays not called, and then called when they weren't supposed to be called. So.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things that I think can be better about the officiating, but the only time will really tell and see where it goes. Because
sure.
I feel like this could also be one of those things where they do the whole yep, we're gonna be more strict about this, but then kind of die off about it.
Oh yeah.
But with that being said, that is going to actually wrap it up for us here today. It has been great to finally be back in the studios with
Man.
everybody, being able to talk some sports, especially with Zach being back in the studio with me after a little hiatus
Yep.
from the studio, but we're definitely glad to have him back. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you guys next week on Crunch Time.